UCLA Med School, 2023. They got 13,000 applications. They accepted 173 students. That's a 1.3% acceptance rate. So the point is they can accept the best of the best. They're that selective. They can take only the best. But they don't. Not anymore. Back in 2021, this is all George Floyd. Don't even get me started on George Floyd all over again. One of the greatest hoaxes of all time, the fact that it changed so much of our history is so unbelievable. I can't even put it in its proper place. But so back in 2001, there was a black applicant to UCLA Med School whose grades were way, way, way below the UCLA average. But the dean of the admissions committee said to the other people on the committee, did you not know that African-American women are dying at a higher rate than anybody else? We need people like this in the medical school. Now, we could talk about that claim if you'd like. The idea that black women have worse health outcomes. It's not even entirely true. But even if it were, it goes back to the same progressive mentality that you blame systems and not people. Right? You got to blame systems and not decisions that more are often made by black women. You can't have that conversation because you can't have any conversation about personal responsibility. You can't have any conversation about life decisions. You can't have any conversation about choices that individual people make that have outcomes to them. You can't. It has to be all either fate or, more likely, racism. But again, we could do that later if you'd like. So the race-based admissions in California, affirmative action in California is illegal. How about that? Quick backstory to that. Back in 1996, California, the voters, passed Prop 209. It ended affirmative action. What year did I say? It was 1996. In 2020, there was another proposition to repeal Prop 209 and bring affirmative action back. And the people of California voted 57-42 no. No, if we don't want any affirmative action in California. It was one of the one weirdly conservative things that people of California have done recently. Say, no, we do not want affirmative action in California. But they still have it. They just hide it a little differently. And they still do it at UCLA Med School. So the reason we're bringing this up now is because they've had some whistleblowers. This is from the Washington Free Beacon. Race-based admissions have turned UCLA into a failed medical school. Said one former member of the admissions staff. We want racial diversity so badly, we're willing to cut corners to get it. How about that? They take one of the best med schools in the country. I think it was ranked number 8, maybe number 5, 8, whatever. One of the top 10 med schools in the country. And now a failed medical school. They're turning it into one. So the Washington Free Beacon, just to make sure they weren't talking to one disgruntled employee, they spoke with 8 professors and many other UCLA officials, and then people on the admissions committee. Think about how bad it has to be for otherwise progressive people. Clearly, right? I'm sure there's not a ton of conservatives at the UCLA Med School. So you have otherwise progressive people at UCLA Med School coming forward, daring to speak out about how bad it is. That has to be pretty bad. There's been a handful of stories of medical doctors getting canceled for racial things. Do you remember back in it was 2021? The editor-in-chief of JAMA, the Journal of the American Medical Association, he did a podcast, and they did a tweet. They sent out a tweet about the podcast that no one ever listens to. But the tweet was, no physician is racist, so how can there be structural racism in healthcare? Ooh, how dare you go against the George Floyd tide. Fired, gone, out. Bunch of other stories just like that. So maybe we're coming to the end of that hysteria. Maybe people are starting to see the danger of what happens when you go down that road. They're seeing the fruit of that. They see what happens when you lower standards. Because, goodness, we talked about this in the past with lowering the standards of air traffic controllers. as planes are bumping into each other on the runway and having close calls, like almost landing on top of on top of their plane. You're like, maybe we should have the best air traffic controllers. Nope, they've gotten rid of that test. They've replaced it with a questionnaire. We've talked about that before. But maybe that doesn't resonate as much as your doctor. No one cares if there's black doctors. We want excellent doctors. That's all we want. Like, if there's anything where a meritocracy should remain, it would be in your doctor. In some of the cohorts, she admitted, that's the new head of last couple of years, since 2021, head of the admissions department. In some of the cohorts, she admitted more than 50% of students failed standardized tests on emergency medicine, family medicine, internal medicine, and pediatric. 50%. One professor said that a student in the operating room could not identify a major artery when asked, then berated the professor for putting her on the spot. Love that one. How dare you ask me? Another said that students at the end of their clinical rotations don't know basic lab tests, and in some cases are unable to present patients. It just means you present a patient, you're just like why is this person sick? What are their symptoms? What could it be? What could the treatment be? You're like what a doctor does. that's doctoring. And here they don't even know, they're not even able to do the basics. One professor said, I don't know how some of these students are going to be junior doctors. Faculty are seeing a shocking decline in knowledge of medical students. Amazing. To the point of double standards, all the normal criteria for getting into medical school only apply to people of certain races. For other people, those criteria are completely disregarded. The dean of admissions, this woman, she's also the vice chair for equity, diversity, and inclusion of UCLA's anesthesiology department. The admissions committee routinely gives Black and Latino applicants a pass for subpar metrics. 4 people who served on it said, while whites and Asians need near perfect scores to even be considered. The bar for underrepresented minorities is, quote, as low as you could possibly imagine, one admissions committee member said. It completely disregards grades and achievements. It's as low as you could possibly imagine. How about that? It's not, well, we could have the best, but instead we have very good. No, it's we could have the best, and instead it's as bad as you could possibly imagine. So says that one of the people on the admissions committee, not me. So already, just a couple years in, UCLA has dropped in the rankings. They're now 18th best medical school, but that's just because they're still buoyed up by the Asians that they still do accept. She has lashed out at officials who question the qualifications of minority candidates, 5 sources said, suggesting that naysayers are privileged, implying that they're racist and subjecting them to diversity training sessions. I love that. After a Native American applicant was rejected in 2021, Lucero is her name. Lucero chewed out the committee and made members sit through a 2-hour lecture on Native history delivered by her own sister, according to 3 people familiar with the incident. A 2-hour lecture. At a meeting on February 2022, according to 2 people present, Lucero demanded that a highly qualified white male be knocked down several spots because, as she put it, quote, we have too many of his kind. How about that sentence? Too many of his kind. She also told doctors who voiced concern that they had no right to an opinion because they were not BIPOC. That's black, indigenous people of color. BIPOC. And insisted that a Hispanic applicant who had performed poorly on her anesthesiology rotation medical school should be bumped up. UCLA still produces some very good graduates, one professor said, but 1/3 to 1/2 of the medical school is incredibly unqualified. 24% of students failed 3 or more what they called shelf exams. If we have any doctors, former med school students who can give some further insight into this. But I understand a shelf exam is what you take after the end of one of your clinical rotations. So you do a rotation in this field over here or this area of study over here, and then you take an exam at the end of that. 24% have failed 3 or more. Not 24% have failed one of them. Like maybe you don't, whatever. Pediatrics doesn't, you don't like doing pediatrics, so you end up failing the pediatrics shelf exam or whatever. No. 24% have failed 3 or more. These are our future doctors. Now, I make a sidebar here. I completely reject the idea, and this is one of the woke ideas as well. This one's been around for a long time, that black students perform better with black teachers. That we got to get more black teachers with black students, because I totally completely I find it so offensive and so not true at all. It's so absurd. Do not buy that for a second. Do not go down that road. You go down that road, this is what you get. You get this type of thinking. But let's say that's true. Let's say that's it's not true. But okay, we need Chicano. Do people even know what that word means? It's a big word in California, Chicano. So we need a Hispanic doctor to go to Hispanic neighborhoods, to improve the health of Hispanic people in Hispanic neighborhoods. That's the premise. Let's say that's even true. These are the Hispanic doctors you're going to send forth. The ones that are failing all their tests, otherwise would have failed out of med school itself. That's who you're going to send off, and you think that's going to improve things? So I'll tell you exactly what's going to happen. I guarantee you. Too many of these students are failing the tests. So they're going to lower the standards of the test. Or they're going to get rid of the entire process that's been around for how many decades. They're going to get rid of the shelf exams entirely. So they'll either lower the standards or they'll just eliminate it.